Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's your girl Sarah Liza bringing you another video. So I've been thinking about this over the last, I don't know, 1 week or so, and I really want to be sharing more about my journey of becoming an entrepreneur. It's so funny to say, and I know I have like really big dreams, but this is like the path that I really feel I want to be taking, and I know that it is one that isn't easy, but I do feel a pull and a calling towards it. And so I really want to be sharing more about my experiences as well as like my reflections on things. And I've mentioned before that I'm trying to have Wednesdays as the studio vlog update days. And I'm hoping that Sunday will be more about sharing as well as like doing random different things, like when I go out to explore Singapore, which I haven't really done so because, to be honest, it's been a bit hot and humid and the weather has been a bit like erratic. So yeah, I haven't been out. I've been doing a lot more sewing and stuff, so it's been really exciting. So today I wanted to share a little bit about what I've been learning through my time working as a full-time employee. And it's definitely been a huge struggle for me, but I know that I'm coming to a place of much greater stability as well as gratefulness and awareness to why the season is so crucial in my life. I've actually written a blog post about this, which I uploaded just a while ago, and I will put the link down in the description box below for any of you who are readers and prefer reading instead of listening to me share my experiences. But I do feel as well that me sharing is gonna give you a little bit extra nuggets because this is not going to be scripted. That's not really my style anyway. So I've tried like teleprompting and I feel like I have a teleprompting sort of voice or this kind of like persona that I put on, which I don't know, I just feel like I want to be more natural on camera. So this is just gonna be off the top of my head, and whatever I say in this video may not be covered in what I wrote in the blog post, so I do encourage you to check that out as well. So to give you a bit of a backstory of like my life working so far, I haven't been working full-time for a long time in comparison to my peers, and I would say that I have actually really struggled a lot working full-time. And I want to be sharing my experiences about working full-time, hopefully to help anyone who's also in the same position of like wanting to be an entrepreneur, wanting to do your own thing, but also having to deal with like the beginnings of starting by working for someone else first, building a bit more momentum, building a bit more capital and finance before eventually venturing off to do your own thing. And I will say and encourage you not to despise these days of humble beginnings because it is so crucial, it is so important. And I know that when I first moved back to Singapore in 2019, I was, just a hot mess. And I was coming from a place of actually freelancing. So I was living in Sydney before all of this, and I was so comfortable with living the life of a freelancer. Before that, I was actually working part-time. So my job was actually working as a part-time social media assistant as well as videographer when I first graduated from college, and my background was actually in branded fashion. I was fortunate enough to actually work in fashion, but I was doing something completely different, and it was during those early days that I was building my skill set of becoming a videographer, which I am so grateful for. But I didn't really have the foresight or direction of where I wanted to go in life. And while I'm really grateful for all those experiences, I do acknowledge that I did develop really poor habits while working part-time and while working as a freelancer. And so I hope that in my sharing as well, you'll be able to get a sense of what it's like to be working as a freelancer in comparison to working as a full-timer. Because I know that especially if you're consuming a lot of content from like content creators who are most likely freelancers and are doing their own thing, often it's going to come across as they've got a lot of time on their hands. They're sort of like living this very glamorous sort of life. And there's definitely a lot of benefits to working and being your own boss, but it does come at a price. And on hindsight, I feel that unless you have a lot of maturity and structure, as well as a vision and direction and goal towards where you're going, having a freelance lifestyle can actually be quite disruptive. Take it from my experience, which I'm about to share, but I am very grateful having that perspective because I've tasted a life of what I really want to work towards. But now, having worked full time, I know how to better tweak things so that eventually when I do my own thing, I would have a better sense of direction and goal towards where I want to be heading. One of the things that I'm actually really grateful for and has really helped me working full time is that I've learned the value of humble beginnings. I would say that I'm a really independent person and I like to do things by myself, but I would say as well is that in my early 20s, I didn't really learn how to work well with people, and I didn't really learn to take instruction or like be under submission. I didn't learn to take that well, and so I was always kind of like hit butting internally whenever I was given like a task to do when I was being employed by a company. So when I was freelancing, it was fine because like I obviously was my own boss, I was doing my own thing. But when I was working as a part-timer, I always struggled with being told what to do. But I feel that it's really important to build the character to be teachable because I've come to the place of realizing that in order to be a great leader, and especially if you do want to be someone who runs their own business in the near future, someone who will have employees under you, I think it's really important to start from the bottom and really learn and pick up, what are good managing skills to have, what is it like to be able to lead with grace and a lot of patience, as well as be very tactful in the way you deal with people and not undervalue or mistreat people. I think like all of this is really important to learn, and it's very hard to learn if you're always by yourself and like freelancing. And I would say as well that it's quite rare to come across leaders who are actually great and who can mentor you. I think oftentimes we have like superiors who aren't the best role models, but I do take that as a learning opportunity as well, because you can see what works and what doesn't. And it's also important to take the stand of not reciprocating the bad or the evil that people have done towards you, but actually like changing that and be able to turn that around so that when you're leading people in future, you'll be able to be a great mentor for them. You'll also be a great role model for them. Yeah, I would say that I guess in my younger days and as youth in general, we tend to feel that we know everything when in reality we don't. And I think it's important to have those slices of humble pie every now and then to realize that you can learn a lot from your superiors. Really take it as your stepping stones in life, because one day you want to be someone who people can look up to, people can respect. And I'm sure that all of us want to leave behind a legacy and a life full of impact and purpose. So I do believe that it's really important that even though you're starting from the bottom, it's a great starting point, and it's one that we shouldn't belittle, it's one that we shouldn't despise. So another huge takeaway that I've taken from working full-time is actually learning to manage my time. So when I was freelancing, I had all the time in the world, but I was a terrible steward of time. I found myself watching a lot of YouTube, and while I did learn a lot through YouTube, I would say that I attribute most of my video editing and like photography, videography skill set to watching a lot of hours on YouTube. But YouTube can be distracting in that there's a lot of content and you kind of can get sucked into the world of YouTube with all the different genres. And apart from that, I was also probably like watching Korean dramas, just wasting a lot of time. Yeah, so I feel it's really important to have a goal and target, especially if you're freelancing and not having much of a structure. Because if you don't, most of the time you're gonna be wasting a lot of time, which was pretty much the story of my early 20s. But now that I'm working full time and realizing that this is not the trajectory I want to be heading towards in the long run, I really, really value my time, and I'm beginning to work like never before. I used to give myself so many excuses on why I don't have enough time or I can't pattern make and whatnot. But of late, I've been putting in the hard hours, and honestly, I am so grateful that I'm actually having this pivot and life change, because I've realized that it is so important to take ownership over your life. I think one thing that I really struggled with transitioning from uni days to working is that school and stuff doesn't really prepare you for life, I feel. Yeah, it kind of feels like you're in this bubble of like school because you're so comfortable with like all your friends. Perspective of life is very narrow because you're kind of in this little world of like just worrying about assignments and stuff. And then eventually when you graduate, you just get thrust into like real life, and then you have to deal with bills and I don't know, like time management and just a lot of things. And it can get very overwhelming, and so often we can feel like really lost in it all. So I will say that it is helpful to have a full-time job initially, especially if you're wanting to go down the track of becoming an entrepreneur one day. I think that having a full-time job helps to put things into perspective, because you really learn more about companies and how a company is structured, as well as I guess it also kind of shows you what you like and don't like. And with that, I've learned more and more about what I don't like and what I really want to see happen and take place in my life. And so I know and really value time, because I really have to put in extra hours to make this happen. It's really on me. Coming back to the point of ownership, where yeah, you realize perhaps in the later part of your 20s that, you know, life is real. It's really in your hands, in that you are responsible for your own life, and how you live it is really on you. And I know for me that in order to reach the place of, I guess, like freedom, yeah, it just takes a lot of work, and you have to put in the extra hours. And what I've been learning as well is that the pockets of 1 hour here and there, you know, they really add up. I would say as well, don't underestimate how much time you can actually redeem by just investing your efforts into an hour here or an hour there. So for me, I've been putting in the extra hours in my pattern making first thing in the morning. So I get up at 5:30 every morning, and after having breakfast or exercise, I will do about an hour to 1.5 hours of pattern making. And at night, after going out for a walk and kind of like settling down after days of work, I will put in another hour into my pattern making. And over time, this builds up. And if you start adding up the hours, you can actually redeem one full day by just allocating time and effort into these little pockets. And so this is something that I've started doing, and it's something that has really been giving me a lot of results. And so I would say as well, not to waste your time. I think it's so important to be really intentional about your time, especially if you want to be building something of your own. It's definitely important to be mindful of how you're allocating your time and prioritizing your time. So the third point I wanted to make is that I didn't realize that freedom actually requires structure. And it's a bit of a, I don't know what's the word, a bit of a paradox. When I was working as a freelancer, I thought that I was having a lot of freedom, and in some sense I did in terms of time. But I was not having much structure, and so that freedom also wasn't doing me any good. But I'm actually really glad that a lot of things happened in my life that has kind of like forced me to work full time. because through this entire process, I realized the importance of having structure and having routine. When I was freelancing, while I did have some routine, I didn't have a lot of healthy habits, and so I was kind of like a workaholic. I would do like my edits, the entire day. I didn't really give myself much rest. I also didn't really socialize much or build much on relationships. But I'm realizing more and more that it is so important to have downtime. It is so important to have times where you can relax and reflect, and also have times of fun and enjoyment. And also, I wasn't working with the goal of, I guess, having financial freedom in mind. The whole concept of financial freedom was very foreign to me, and it was something that didn't really cross my mind. And I would say that in my early 20s, I was very ignorant towards finances. And I would say that finances is a huge part in freedom, because if you're constantly thinking about when your next meal will be, how you'll be able to pay rent, can you afford whatever it is you want to buy with peace of mind, I think all of this really plays into freedom. And so my initial, I guess, idea of freedom was actually very naive. It was also very short-sighted. So the benefit of working full-time at the moment is really helping me to build better habits and also build structures that is helping me grow my capacity. So like I mentioned earlier, time management is one structure that is really important to nail. Another important structure would be how you are managing your finances, which is something that I'm still, I guess, on my baby steps journey, but it's really important to even embark on. So if anything, I would say don't let the idea of freedom or the fantasy of freedom captivate you to the point where you have no direction, no goal, no structure to work towards, because freedom is definitely achievable, but you just need to put in structures and processes to help you get to that place of freedom, if that makes sense. And the last thing that I wanted to share today is one that I've definitely struggled with, and that is stability. I would say that unless you are a very driven person, and as I've mentioned, if you have goals and targets that you're working towards, unless you have all of that, you're probably going to struggle with stability when it comes to working as a freelancer, because a lot of it is going to be on your own proactivity and how much drive you have towards pushing and getting projects done or starting on projects. And so I'm actually really grateful that I currently have my 9 to 5, because one thing that it has really helped me with is stability in finances. Yeah, I would say that I honestly was struggling financially when I was freelancing, because I've never been one to like hustle or kind of like knock down on doors in terms of getting clients in. I've always had work through word of mouth and referrals, which I am so grateful for. But because I naturally am not driven by monetary gain, in that I'm like a really simple person, and so I don't really have like huge financial goals or targets, which I feel that I should start having in place, at least have something to work towards to build my future. But because I didn't have any of that in the past, stability was something that I didn't really have, because it was something that I really wasn't pushing for. But now with full-time work, it's definitely helped me in that I'm not worrying about like when my next meal is gonna be and if I'm able to pay for things and whatnot. It's definitely helped me focus more on what I want to build for the future. I'm actually really grateful that this was a point that my manager brought up to me. So a couple of days ago, she actually pulled me aside and she said that she really wanted stability for my work. And I took it with a good heart and attitude, because I know that I've struggled a lot with stability. I've been very sporadic, and it's probably because I've had that freelance part-timer mindset for so long. And I've always sort of been led or been very heavily influenced by how I feel, my mood, and whenever I get like mood swings or if I'm not in the mood, then my passion or drive sort of dips. And so I've been on the journey of learning to be more stable, not only emotionally and mentally, but also in terms of endurance. And I think all of that is so important. And often, I know, at least saying from my point of view, it's always easier to want to take the easy way out. But I also do want to encourage you that stability is a process, and don't get disheartened or discouraged whenever you stumble, because we all do make mistakes, we all do fumble and like falter at times. But what's important is to keep getting back up and keep pushing the boundaries, getting stronger, and building that endurance. So I'd say that stability is something that I really desire for my life. I am very tired of having all these ebbs and flows and ups and downs, and it would be really nice to build some sort of momentum and get things going. So these are some of the things that I've learned over the last year and a half of working full time, and I've definitely struggled a lot, and my heart is definitely with those who struggle with it. And whether you want to be an entrepreneur down the road or you are someone who is comfortable with working full time, I do want to encourage you to keep having a good attitude towards working for others, working with others. Know that you play an important role, whether you believe it or not, and know that you can definitely make impact wherever you are. It's really important to keep having that mindset of wanting to grow, wanting to change, to be a blessing to others, and also to be able to influence others to better our society. And I hope that you will continue to stay encouraged. A bit of a random sharing today, but I do hope that it helps, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye!